Hey guys, it is March 9, 2015, the day of yet another Apple event, and you know exactly what that means. It means that I'm going to sit here, look at this camera, and talk to you about the thing that you've already seen. Let's get started. Today, as Apple does multiple times every year, Apple announced some new products, talked about some new cool stuff, and then talked about some things that you probably won't even touch for a couple of years. Let's get started with the things that you will probably touch in the next couple of months, actually. HBO Now and the new reduced price Apple TV. After Tim Cook walked on stage and everyone in the Yerba Buena Center watched this really strange, I mean, it wasn't really strange, it was kind of cool, this video of an Apple store opening up in China, and Tim Cook started talking about how big the retail has gotten, and then they were like, all right, that's enough about numbers and bullshit. We'll start talking about products. So he started to talk about content, and then brought out the CEO of HBO. The CEO of HBO came out, basically said, hey, you know that thing that you've been stealing from us, HBO Go? Well, you can pay for it now. It's $15 a month. It's called HBO Now. But here's the kicker. It's exclusive to Apple devices, and the Apple TV initially. So the Apple TV, which is this box. 1 second. It's in here somewhere, I promise. This is how well used the Apple TV is. The Apple TV is this box. It's really pretty, kind of. I mean, it's just a little set-top box. Everyone has seen one of these. You probably have one in a closet somewhere. The Apple TV, this did cost $99. Now it costs $69. Because $99 is too much for a box that did the same thing, if not less, than its competitors. So now it's undercutting the majority of them by at least $20, and it's the only way you'll be able to watch HBO Now for the foreseeable future. So this is now $79. So I've lost $20 in value, and I guess I'll plug it back in at some point, so I can watch Game of Thrones in Silicon Valley legally. So after the CEO of HBO walked off stage, Tim Cook and him did a high-five thing as they walked past. It was weird. Then they started to talk about the new MacBook. So they started out with this video. There were 6 videos this conference, which is a lot for an Apple event. Usually they try to stick around 3 or 2 to 3, but there were 6 videos. 2 of them were about metal, which was also unnecessary and super strange. Johnny Ive really only gets paid from his speaking appearances for these videos. But anyway, so Apple announced the new MacBook with this really cool video of a bubble and a screen, and it was moving around, and then the MacBook started spinning, and then it was silver, and then it did another spin, and then it turned black or space gray, and it did another spin, and it turned that beautiful gold that everyone loves. And then everyone was like, holy shit, Apple's making a gold MacBook, and Twitter went crazy, and I went crazy, and then the video ended, and then they were like, we made a new MacBook. So this new MacBook, it is called just the MacBook. It has a Retina display with a 2560 by 1540 display, so it means it's really high resolution. Way better than the current shitty display that's inside of my MacBook Air, which is like 1280 by 900 or something crazy low. It's really, really thin. I think it's like 15% or something thinner than the 11-inch MacBook Air, which is already a stupid thin laptop. It weighs 2 pounds, which is half a pound lighter than the MacBook Air. And I'll put it up on the screen. There's an image of what the inside of the new MacBook looks like, and it's basically just the logic board and then batteries, and that's it. Apple has like magicked their way into a logic board that's about that big, and then just filled the rest of the space with batteries. And the batteries, they've layered the batteries inside of the chassis of this computer. So instead of it just being one flush battery, it's a bunch of different size batteries angled into the incline of the computer. So that's pretty cool. It's supposed to give you an all-day battery life, which probably works out to around 7 or 8 hours of average use. I don't really get anywhere near that on my 13-inch Air. Inside of this new MacBook is a Core M processor, which as far as power and like power consumption is concerned, somewhere in between like an iPad and a low-end like Windows computer with like an i3 processor inside. So that low power output and consumption means that it does not need a fan, which is why the thing is so thin. So it'll probably, hopefully, maybe not run hot. But I mean, no one really knows. We'll have to wait for reviews to come out, wait for people to actually get their hands on it outside of Apple's own building. But the for reference, there are already laptops on the market with this Core M chip inside, like the Lenovo Yoga M, and it's not great. It has somewhat middling performance, but the reviewers don't really know if that's attributed to the fact that it's running Windows, or the fact that Lenovo just didn't really optimize the chip or the RAM set or the hard drive or whatever to the amount of power that the Core M chip produces. And traditionally, as far as battery life and stuff is concerned, OS X always beats Windows devices as far as battery consumption is concerned. So that stuff might work itself out on this MacBook, but this is very much a computer that is wait for the second one. I would not recommend that anyone go buy this thing on day one, because the second generation version will be miles better. Just they'll have the kinks worked out. Core M, the second generation of Intel's Core M, will undoubtedly be better. This computer is in a strange spot. Apple is marketing this computer as like the flagship for their like mobile computing line, which is fine. But in reality, it's actually just a glorified iPad Air with a keyboard attached to it, because it's not really going to, you're not going to be able to like hardcore edit video on it like you're going to be able to do on a Retina MacBook. And it doesn't have the productivity that like the 11-inch Air will or the 13-inch Air will. It's just an iPad with a keyboard attached. And Apple does need to like get into that market, because people are buying, like, I don't have the exact numbers, but people are buying like 64 128 gig iPads for $700 or $800, and then they're buying $200 iPad keyboard cases, which adds up to like $900, which is only a stone's throw away. If you're spending that much money, what's another $100 or $200 to buy this new MacBook, which is a complete unit, is light as hell, and has a new and like pretty good, apparently, keyboard. So I don't really see why people who are already buying this iPad with the keyboards aren't just going to go buy this MacBook, which is what it's for. But for the general public who like are like using their computers to actually compute, I don't think this computer, at least in its current state, is worth anything. It's got like I said, it's got a Core M processor inside from Intel. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage on the low end, and that pretty good looking Retina display for $12.99, and you get all of that and 512 gigs of onboard storage for $15.99, which is about how much people pay for computers at this point. Those are two like pretty round and even good numbers for these computers, and they'll probably sell like hotcakes. But it's I personally, I'm not going to buy it myself, at least this generation, and I can't really recommend it for anyone else to go buy it. Also, this just came out maybe like 15 or 20 minutes ago. It's currently spreading around like wildfire on Twitter. This computer only has a 480p webcam in it, which is mind-blowing in 2015. Like, this is the one I'm currently using is 720p. Your iPhone shoots at 1080p. The front-facing camera on your iPhone shoots at 720p. The fact that the Apple could not figure out how to get a 720p front-facing camera into this laptop is mind-blowing. So obviously the second generation one will have a 720p webcam, but this one does not. And it does come in 3 colors. Your favorite 3 colors, if you're an Apple user. Your silver, your space gray, and to satisfy the tackiest of Americans and Chinese people everywhere, a beautiful, beautiful, tacky as shit gold. Just like the iPhones, just like the iPads. The gold one will undoubtedly sell like hotcakes because Americans have very poor taste. And the space gray one looks murderous and beautiful. But like I said, I'm personally not going to buy it this time around. I don't think you should buy it this time around. But we'll see how it goes. We'll wait for some reviews to come in. Maybe that might actually change. Maybe Apple engineered their way out of the weird restrictions that the Core M puts on people. And yeah. So that's the MacBook, which is by far the more interesting product that was announced today, but somehow will not get talked about as much as the watch. So, obviously, unless you've been living underneath a rock for the last year, Apple in September announced that they were going to put out a watch to the grateful cheers of Apple fanboys across America. And back then, looked pretty cool. It looks like this. Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen it. It's just a watch. It's just a smartwatch, an average smartwatch in 2015, and that's what it looked like in September. And everyone in the media and everyone with a technologically inclined brain was like, "That's very cool, Apple. You've made a watch. What does it do that's special?" And today they were supposed to tell us what it did that was special, and Apple did not do that. They had someone named Christy. I think she's on the Time Most Influential Person list. I didn't know who she was. The audience didn't seem to know who she was. And she came out and started talking about how she did a half marathon in Africa and how her Apple Watch helped her out. And how she used it to coach her way through the African plains and some other bullshit that probably didn't actually happen. And her and Tim Cook did a weird Samsung thing where they had fake banter on stage, and it was super awkward, and no one really liked it. It was a very strange and dull period of the press conference. And then she left the stage. They came out on stage and then had someone use the watch in a regular use case scenario. They just had them use the watch. And it was very underwhelming. Like, to be completely honest, I was very much underwhelmed. I was, like, kind of excited about this Apple Watch. If not because I was going to buy it, because I'm not in the iOS ecosystem, as far as mobile platform is concerned, because I'm an Android user, and it wouldn't work on my phone regardless. But it was so underwhelming that it felt slow. It didn't have anything that a current Android Wear watch doesn't have. It didn't have anything that a Pebble from 2 years ago didn't have, and it doesn't have anything that a Pebble Time, which was just announced last week, or Pebble Time Steel as far as looks are concerned, doesn't offer you right now for $249. It's super strange for Apple to release this because it's not special. Like, when I think of, like, an Apple device, I mean, less so now, because Apple has truly hit the mainstream in the last 7 or 8 years at the release of the iPhone, more in the last 4 or 5 years. But Apple has hit the mainstream so hard that when they announced, like, the iPhone 5, that phone felt special. Not because it was magical in any way, because it wasn't doing anything that Android phones weren't already doing, but it was so refined and so special, and in a package that was very Apple and felt very, like, industrial, and this is exactly what we want, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is why you can only do it on an iPhone. And this is why this screen size is special, why this camera is special, why this form factor is special, because it's an iPhone 5. But this Apple Watch just feels like a smartwatch. Like, it doesn't have anything special about it. Sure, it has Apple Pay, which you can't really use on anything else outside of the Apple Watch. But what's stopping Samsung or Motorola from throwing in an NFC reader, which is all that's inside of this iPhone 6 or this Apple Watch, from throwing a NFC chip into the Moto 360 second generation or whatever the hell Samsung decides to put out for a wearable? What's stopping them from just putting an NFC chip in there and then having you use Google Wallet or Samsung Pay? Nothing. There's nothing stopping them, and it's not special, this Apple Watch is. There are 3 models of the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch Sport, the Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch Edition. The differences between them are just the materials that they're made out of. So the Apple Watch Sport is just made out of that brushed aluminum that you know and love. It's what your MacBook is made out of. If you have a recent MacBook, it's what your iPhone is made out of. It's just silver. It's just some brushed aluminum. That costs $349. The low end, $399 for the bigger one, because there's two sizes. There's like a girlfriend size and a boyfriend size, because that's just how watches work. The smaller one is cheaper by $50, and then the bigger one's a little bit more expensive by $50. You get a rubber, it's not rubber, it's some sort of plastic band that goes around the watch, and that's how you keep it on your wrist and do all the cool things with it. So that's the Apple Watch Sport. The Apple Watch is the one that's next. That thing costs between $549 flat and $1,199. So that is covered in a shiny stainless steel, which Johnny Ive talked about for ages and talked about how cool stainless steel was, which was very strange. That's basically it. It's the same watch, same internals. It's just got a stainless steel case, and as you move up the price bracket, the bands are different. So there's a sport band, which is the rubbery, plasticky type band. Then there's leather bands, and then there's metal bands, and then there are different metal bands, and there's yet another different kind of metal band with a bunch of links that you just magnets, and it's magic somehow. And then those ones cost a lot of money. And then there's the Apple Watch Edition, which starts at, and sit down if you aren't already, starts at $10,000. Just gonna let that sink in. $10,000. That is 4 zeros after that one. There's a comma in there too. $10,000. Which is fine, I guess, for some stupid rich people who are gonna drop 10 grand on a watch that's gonna go obsolete in a year and a half. But if $10,000 just isn't your cup of tea, you can also spend $17,500 on the rose gold watch with a red leather band. Just gonna let that number sit in too. $17,500. You can buy a Prius with that kind of money. A car you can buy for the same amount of money that you can buy a friggin' Apple Watch. That's great for Apple. They're gonna make a killing, because the thing probably costs like $150, $175 for Apple to actually make, and then they just throw some gold around it, and then they charge $17,000 for it. But Apple is positing themselves now as a fashion brand, which is totally fine, except for the fact that Apple didn't actually tell us or anyone why it was anything other than a gadget, because that's all it is. The Android Wear devices are unnecessary. They're just, they enhance one's life, enhance in quotes, they enhance one's life in a way that makes sense for Android users and soon for iOS users. And the Apple Watch was touted and is still talked about by Apple in a way that makes it like, you know, your iPhone that you already have in your pocket? Well, this is just like that, just as cool, except it's on your wrist. When really, it's just a gimped iPhone on your wrist. And it just presents things in a smaller and less convenient way than the iPhone that's already in your pocket. And it doesn't actually provide you with any new or interesting use cases other than the ability to send your heartbeat and draw dicks to your friends. That's all this Apple Watch is. And I can do that on the Moto 360 or on the LG G Watch R or on any of the multitude of Android Wear watches. And because Apple didn't actually show us anything cool, really, with this Apple Watch, the gates are still wide open for Google to come in with new Android Wear software at I/O this summer that completely blows away what we've already seen from the Apple Watch. Or for a smaller player like Pebble to come in with the time with a platform that is dirt cheap. The watch, the steel version, the plastic one looks like a toy. That I already pre-ordered the plastic one and I know it looks like a toy. The steel one, which I'm thinking about upgrading to, does not look like a toy. Anyway, or Pebble can come in with the steel or the time steel, and come in with that very wide open back end and platform, and just have app developers come and develop for the Pebble. And because that thing is so damn cheap, If you put the Pebble in Best Buy or in Target or in Walmart and say, hey, you know the Apple Watch that you want? Well, this does that and more and only costs $300. They're going to sell like hotcakes. Apple is starting to trip on their own feet. Like they're pulling a Samsung and they're getting a little bit complacent. They did the GS4, which was just a Galaxy S3 with a band-aid on the back, and then they did the Galaxy S5, which was the same as the Galaxy S4 with the same band-aid on the back. Like there was not much difference there. And now with the Galaxy S6, that thing looks like they actually spent more than 15 minutes designing it. And then they're just going to let Android shine on that. They're lightly skinning it with TouchWiz. They're removing features that people didn't use. And they're just going to let Android shine. And that's what I think Apple used to do. And now Apple is introducing things for the sake of introducing things, like this watch. Like, I know why it exists. I know it exists because Apple needs to get into the wearable space. Because the wearable space is the next space that we, as an industry, have decided where computing needs to go. But this doesn't do anything special. The same way that the Android Wear devices don't do anything special, but that's not a knock against them because they were there first. Apple has had basically a year after Android Wear was announced, and the products have been on the market to do something new, and Apple has done nothing new other than put some gold on it and then have the audacity to charge $17,000 for it. It's just crazy to me. That's basically it. That's all of my thoughts on today. It was a very strange day. It was a very weird Apple event in that I didn't come away from it wanting the things that they talked about. Like, in the moment when they announced that MacBook, I was all over it because the thing looks gorgeous. And then as details started to come out in the processor, and I started to look into what computers already had the processor and how they were performing, and then that 480p camera nonsense came out, I just got my hype level just very, very sharply decreased. And then the watch just didn't do anything for me. Apple Watch doesn't do anything special. So now I'm just going to wait for the Moto 360 second generation and then have a better experience on Android, which is crazy. Like, now the only thing that's separating iOS and iOS on the watch and Android Wear on the watch is iMessage. That's the only thing, because all the Apple Watch does is mirror notifications the same way Android Wear does. There's nothing special about these platforms now except iOS has iMessage, which is crazy when you think about it. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions, qualms, quandaries, concerns, I don't have any other Q-sounding words. But if you have any other ideas or want to talk to me about what I just talked to you about, just drop a comment right down there. You see it? Look down. There's a comment section. There's a text field. You just type on your computer and type some words in there, and then I'll respond with some other words. It's gonna be great. I'm at Godsua on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, you can watch me go crazy about a multitude of things, but mostly technology and soccer. Go Galaxy. I'm at Chasing Grayson on Instagram, and I'm Chasing Grayson on the YouTube. Thanks for watching, and go forth in technology. I don't know how to end these videos. If anyone has any ideas on how to end these videos, please like, favorite, and subscribe this video. It really helps me out. And if you could just leave a comment below on how I should end these videos, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Peace.